It's February 27th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with South Korea's efforts to handle U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy. Seoul's Trade Minister An says South Korea and the U.S. will be able to find a constructive and win-win alternative as the Trump administration is set to press ahead with reciprocal tariffs on U.S. imports. An will spend the next 3 days in Washington, D.C. for trade negotiations with the U.S. South Korea and the Trump administration have agreed to use the expression the denuclearization of North Korea instead of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And South Korea, the U.S. and Japan once again denounced North Korea and its illegal nuclear and missile ambitions. U.S. President Donald Trump has confirmed his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky will come to the U.S. and sign the minerals deal this Friday, while also threatening to dump 25% tariffs on the European Union. South Korea's trade minister is in Washington, D.C. to find a breakthrough in the Trump administration's aggressive tariff policies. It's the first time a South Korean minister has traveled to the U.S. since Trump's return to the White House. Our Lee Jae-myung reports.
South Korea's industry minister An expressed confidence that his upcoming talks with U.S. trade officials will be constructive, adding that the two sides will be able to find win-win alternatives amid Trump administration tariff plans. Speaking to reporters upon arriving at the Dulles International Airport on Wednesday, Minister An said that Seoul and Washington will be able to dispel various misunderstandings, as most of the trade issues have been issued through past FTA renegotiations.
We are in a situation where most of the issues, including non-tariff barriers, have been addressed in past FTA renegotiations. Through specific consultations with the U.S. side, I believe that we can dispel various misunderstandings and craft a constructive alternative.
The industry minister also emphasized that his visit to Washington is aimed at finding the best option to protect South Korean businesses while deepening bilateral partnership with the U.S. on strategic industrial sectors. He also said that he feels a great sense of responsibility as the matter is of great national interest. An cited the handling of the previous Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act, saying that Seoul will be able to find a constructive win-win alternative with the current U.S. administration. The minister will hold talks with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick during his visit, with plans to discuss U.S. tariffs and bilateral cooperation in the shipbuilding industry, cutting-edge industries, energy, and other strategic sectors. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Seoul and Washington have agreed to consistently use the phrase denuclearization of North Korea and not to use the phrase denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Seoul and Washington have agreed to use the term denuclearization of North Korea instead of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula when addressing the North Korean nuclear issue. South Korean ambassador to the U.S., Cho Hyun-dong, made this announcement during a monthly meeting of South Korean correspondents in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. As Seoul does not have nuclear weapons, the two expressions largely convey the same purpose of dismantling Pyongyang's nuclear program. However, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula holds the broader meaning of not only ridding North Korea of its nuclear program, but also the possibility of South Korea going nuclear or hosting U.S. tactical nuclear weapons. To make the meaning clearer, second Trump administration has decided to use the expression the denuclearization of North Korea in a consistent manner. Following the agreement, Seoul's top envoy to the U.S. added that the term was used in documents issued during high-level meetings, including the U.S.-Japan summit and the trilateral foreign ministers meeting between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Meanwhile, South Korea, the U.S., and Japan raised voices together at a UN conference on disarmament in Geneva, condemning North Korea's military provocations and calling for its complete denuclearization. while pointing out that Pyongyang is continuing its reckless provocations in blatant violation of relevant UN Security Council resolutions, The three countries said the international community is resolute that Pyongyang will never have the status of a nuclear weapon state. The North Korean representative dismissed the statement, calling it outdated and meaningless. Calling denuclearization an absurd fantasy, he blamed U.S. and its allies' military actions as main cause of instability on the peninsula, and said that North Korea's status as a full-fledged nuclear state will remain an undeniable reality. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And the U.S. House of Representatives has reintroduced a bill calling for the end of the Korean War and the signing of a peace treaty. A Democratic Congressman Brett Sherman held a press conference on Wednesday where he announced that he had resubmitted the Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act. The bill calls on the U.S. Secretary of State to make diplomatic efforts with the two Koreas to achieve a peace treaty that finally brings the Korean War to an end. And it also calls for a roadmap for achieving those goals. The bill further calls for Washington and Pyongyang to negotiate the establishment of liaison offices in each other's capitals and a comprehensive review of travel bans against North Korea. A total of 33 House members co-sponsored the bill. A minerals deal between the U.S. and Ukraine is set to be inked this Friday, but without Washington's security guarantees, President Donald Trump says. We head over to Washington, D.C., where Voice of America correspondent Chris Keskeo is standing by. Hello there, Chris.
Hi, good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So, Chris, first off, walk us through what the minerals deal will entail eventually.
Right. U.S. President Donald Trump says that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected at the White House on Friday to sign that critical minerals agreement. The critical minerals agreement includes a 50-50 split between Kyiv and Washington of the proceeds from Ukraine's minerals, oil, and gas. The agreement also calls for the establishment of a reconstruction investment fund that will be co-managed by the U.S. and Ukraine. The United States would commit to the development of a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine, to quote the draft agreement. Ukraine's reserves of titanium, a key component for the aerospace, medical, and automobile industries, are believed to be among Europe's largest. Ukraine also holds some of Europe's largest known reserves of lithium, which is required to produce batteries, ceramics, and glass.
Well, we do know that the deal will be sealed this Friday, but what about security guarantees that Ukraine has long asked for from the U.S.? Apparently, they're not part of the deal.
That's correct. Hard security guarantees are not part of this deal, but officials said negotiations are still ongoing. Trump said during Wednesday's cabinet meeting that it was up to Europe, not the U.S., to provide security guarantees. But he also said the minerals deal would help ensure Ukraine's security because U.S. workers would be in Ukraine and nobody is going to be messing around with our people when we're there, to quote. He also backed the idea of a European peacekeeping force that has been put forth by the UK and France recently.
Well, then I have to ask, why is Trump rushing to seal the minerals deal with Ukraine? Are there specific reasons?
Yes, earlier this month, China announced sweeping export controls on targeting 5 metals across the defense, clean energy, and other industries. The move came just minutes after an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods was announced by President Trump, and it went into effect earlier this month. China is the dominant global producer of rare earth, which are a subset of 17 critical minerals. They mined 240,000 metric tons in 2023. Chinese reserves at the end of 2023 amounted to 44 million metric tons. By contrast, the United States, which is the second largest producer of rare earths, extracted 43,000 metric tons and had reserves of 1.8 million metric tons. So you can see that there's a wide gap, even though the two countries are the largest miners of these so-called rare earths.
Well, that's not it. Just hours ago, Trump hinted at slapping a 25% tariff on imports from the European Union. Tell us more.
Yeah, President Trump said he's decided to hit the European Union with 25% tariff, saying, quote, the EU was formed to screw the United States. Trump said, we have made a decision and we'll be announcing it very soon. He made these comments during that same cabinet meeting on Wednesday. He said the tariffs would apply to all things, but specifically mentioned car imports, saying they've really taken advantage of us. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products, and we accept everything of them.
Chris, before I let you go, we have to talk about this gold card that Trump introduced this week. Apparently, foreigners, including myself, can buy the right to live and work in the U.S. with not just $5 million US. Tell us more.
Yeah, this is what Trump is proposing as a replacement for the EB-5 immigrant visa. EB-5s allow foreign immigrant investors to become permanent residents if they invest in projects that create or preserve U.S. jobs. But Trump has said that this is not going to be a requirement under this so-called gold card that he wants to sell. We are going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million. He went on to say it's going to give you green card privileges, plus it's going to be a route to citizenship. And wealthy people would be coming into our country by buying this card. He said specifics of this plan will come out in 2 weeks. Congress created the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program in 1990. It's administered by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Incidentally, that's probably the last time that the U.S. Congress has passed any immigration laws. Under the last few administrations, immigration policy has been decided by the president, whether it's Obama, Trump, and Biden.
Well, those cards will be available, like you said, in 2 weeks, so it'll be interesting how popular they will be, actually. Thank you, Chris, for the report today.
Yeah, good to see you.
The Constitutional Court began deliberating on Thursday whether acting President Choi Sang-mok's decision not to appoint Court Justice nominee Ma Eun-yuk was unconstitutional. A National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik filed a case against the acting president after Choi appointed 2 of 3 justice nominees selected by the National Assembly last December, but withheld Ma Eun-yuk's appointment, citing the lack of bipartisan agreement. While the Speaker claimed this violated the National Assembly's constitutional authority, Choi's legal team says the decision was merely a postponement, not an omission. They have also challenged Woo's filing of the dispute case, which was done without a formal vote by Assembly members, arguing that the case should be dismissed on procedural grounds. Now, if the court does rule in favor of the National Assembly, Choi may be pressured to appoint Ma, potentially forming a 9-member bench for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment ruling. And prosecutors demanded a 2-year prison term for opposition leader Lee Jae-myung during the final hearing of his appellate trial on Wednesday. Lee was indicted on charges of making false statements in December 2021 during a media interview where he denied knowing a man involved in a land development scandal in Seongnam. He is also accused of having made false claims that there was a pressure from South Korea's land ministry to rezone a research institute site in the Baekhyun-dong area. Now, the court is expected to reach a verdict on March 26th. Both the birth rate and fertility rates here in South Korea have gone up for the first time in 9 years. More marriages during the post-pandemic years and supportive measures drove the rise. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
The number of births last year in South Korea rose for the first time in 9 years, marking a rare and encouraging shift in the nation's long-suffering demographic crisis. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that there were 238,300 births in 2024, up 3.6% compared to the previous year. This marks the first time since 2015 that the number of births in Korea saw an on-year increase. And the nation's total fertility rate, the average number of children a woman is expected to have in her lifetime, also rose for the first time in 9 years to 0.75 after it fell to its lowest annual figure of 0.72 in 2023.
This shift is driven by the post-COVID-19 rise in marriages and an increase in the population of women in their 30s. A survey also shows that compared to 2 years ago, attitudes toward childbirth and parenting have become somewhat more positive.
The official also said that as the number of marriages last year came to 222,422, the highest recorded since 2019, the number of births may continue to see an upward tick this year. The positive shift comes as the government implemented various policies last year, such as extending the duration of parental leave. Yoo Hae-mi, Senior Presidential Secretary for Low Birth Rate Response, said on Wednesday that the government will address policy gaps in childcare and housing while supporting families with multiple children to sustain the increase. And the number of births for just the month of December also rose 11.6% compared to the previous year. But despite the turnaround in the total fertility rate, it remains low by international standards, as South Korea is currently the only country with a fertility rate below 1, signaling a continued need for targeted efforts to boost population growth. The country saw a natural population decline for the 5th straight year, as the number of deaths once again outnumbered the number of births. 이수진, Arirang News.
Korean calligraphy, the art of writing Hangul, has recently been designated as a national heritage. And efforts to acknowledge and spread the art of Hangul 서예 continue. Our An Sung-jin tells us more.
A delicate brushstroke lands on the paper. These single strokes come together to create characters from the Korean alphabet Hangul. This is known as Hangul 서예, or Hangul calligraphy. 94-year-old Chung Joo-hwan has dedicated more than 60 years of his life to practicing calligraphy and is one of the first to practice the art form.
Hangul was easy to learn and memorize. It's also very scientifically made. Look at the beauty of these characters.
Calligraphy in Korea has used both Hanja, which are Chinese characters, and the Korean alphabet Hangul. But last month, Hangul 서예 was designated as a national intangible cultural heritage, recognizing its unique writing style using Korea's own alphabet, as well as its unique font and brushwork. Chung runs his own academy where he passes on his knowledge of calligraphy.
I like letters, but I also started learning calligraphy to control my mind more peacefully and cultivate a sense of virtue, which I think has been helping.
An old saying says that 서예 helps grow patience and train one's mind. Not only does this show the beauty of the written characters, but it also helps develop one's own character.
And calligrapher Lee Jung-hwa feels Hangul is a better medium to convey meaningful messages.
The reason why I like Hangul 서예 is because I can convey emotions through characters that really represent our sound, since it is the Korean alphabet. That's why moving forward, I want to try everything I can using Hangul 서예 and find what I really can accomplish.
The Korea Heritage Service said it will provide support for scholarly studies and initiatives aimed at promoting the transmission of cultural heritage. 서예 is an age-old tradition, and with efforts like these to promote it further, this calligraphy could play a key role in sharing not only the Korean writing system, but also its culture. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Yoon Se-young, and this is The World Now. The Palestinian militant group Hamas has handed over the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages to the Red Cross early on Thursday, just days before the first phase of the truce comes to an end. In return, Israel has also begun to release Palestinian prisoners from Ofra prison in the occupied West Bank. Israel has agreed to release 602 Palestinian prisoners, a move that was initially planned for last weekend but later postponed. Under the truce agreement that began on February 19th, Hamas released 6 hostages on this past Saturday. However, Israel delayed the prisoner release due to what it described as the mistreatment and humiliation of the freed hostages during the handover process. Through mediators, both sides have now agreed to proceed with the remaining prisoner and hostage exchanges. According to the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the upcoming transfer will take place without any special ceremonies. At least 18 people have been killed and 23 others injured after a double-decker tour bus overturned in eastern Thailand. The crash occurred early Wednesday local time after the bus lost control due to a brake failure and plunged down the slope. A total of 49 adults were on board traveling as part of an educational tour. Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Sihanout extended her sympathies to the victims' families and stated that an investigation was underway. Thailand's Ministry of Transport has also announced that it will work with police to investigate the incident and strengthen inspections to guarantee that all public transportation vehicles meet safety standards. Turning to the United States, amid a growing measles outbreak, Texas has reported its first child fatality from the disease. This marks the first measles-related death in the U.S. in nearly a decade, with the last case occurring in Washington state in 2015. According to the Texas Department of Health on Tuesday, the number of reported measles cases in West Texas has risen to 124, an increase of more than 30 cases since late last week. The highest infection rates have been observed among children aged 5 to 17. So far, a total of 18 people have been hospitalized due to the outbreak, and all of them were unvaccinated. Actress Michelle Trachtenberg, best known for her roles in Gossip Girl and other hit TV dramas, has died at the age of 39. She was found dead in her New York apartment on Wednesday morning local time. The exact cause of death remains under investigation. According to police, no signs of foul play were detected, but Trachtenberg had recently undergone a liver transplant and may have suffered complications. Born in New York in 1985, Trachtenberg began her career as a child actress and later gained widespread recognition for her roles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl.
After a chilly start, we'll see a significant warming trend across the country. Most parts will see highs in the low teens, leading to big gaps in temperatures. And in terms of air quality, it should not be as bad as we might think, except for Jeju. However, dust levels will rise in central parts of the country this afternoon. Another key issue today is the dryness in the air. Humidity levels dropped to below 15% in some parts of the capital region yesterday, which may have caused discomfort such as itchy eyes or sore throat. If you're feeling these effects, be sure to drink plenty of water and keep yourself hydrated. It looks like being as dry as yesterday. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 7 degrees higher this afternoon, feeling more like the end of March. Seoul gets up to 13 degrees, Daejeon at 15 degrees. Dry air relief is on the way with nationwide rain in the forecast for the upcoming long weekend. Then cold air moves into the country again next week.
We thank you so much for staying with us this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.